Hello and welcome to the Provisional Nerf News Network Podcast, Episode 7. I'm KT. I'm here with my co-hosts, Grimm's Nerf Works, Jolt King 627, and Vile Mods. And we are here with our special guest, Anthony of Maritime Foam. Say hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, someone did it. Oh, I'm so glad. And I'm so glad it's our guest that did that. How are you doing today? I know you had quite an adventure today, but hopefully now is a chance to sit back and relax a little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited. I am back from my emergency tour, realizing that I had no idea where my passport was a couple days before having to travel into the great US of A. So hopefully all I have to do now is get through the border with my trunk full of plastic weapons, and I'm good to
Perfect.
go.
Perfect. And of course that travel is for Maryland Mayhem.
Yes.
So I actually was just talking about this in the PNNN Discord recently. I'm supposed to go to Maryland Mayhem, but we're having car problems, and I can't get an appointment until like the day before we're supposed to leave. So I'm just like, I'm trying to fix as many of the things as I can. I'm trying to like fingers crossed that it's like not as big of a deal as I think it is, but I don't know right now. I have like a refundable hotel room and like all this stuff, just trying to like, I hope it'll be fine. So hopefully I'll be at Maryland Mayhem and we'll get to meet finally, because we've tried to meet up at stuff in the past, but hopefully this time.
There will be videos. If so, there'll be lots of proof.
Oh, I'm sure.
That'll be good.
I'm sure.
Oh, I hope that works out.
Yeah. How's everybody else doing? Anyone else got anything to say before we dig in today?
I got my Perceptor to hit 120 FPS if you ramrod a dart down it.
I'm sorry, what?
The Perceptor, the original Joltoid. It
No,
separates from
I
the
know.
Perceptor.
Oh my god. Joel.
It's got like a 3-inch or something CPVC barrel on it. I replaced the skirt seal with an actual O-ring because the skirt seal on this one was a little bit worn out. And
You would.
I got a slight spring upgrade. Not very much, but just enough, and I got it up so if you ramrod a dart down there, it'll get 120 FPS.
From what I can tell, you did like surgery to the internals where you like stitched a plunger head from a different blaster onto it or something.
Yeah, it's the plunger head from the Tech Target blaster.
I love this. Just a little bit of a spring upgrade, just enough to make it illegal at most HVZs. that's all.
Yeah,
that's all.
just from I would not have expected you to be able to get it to hit that high. It's actually really cool.
I didn't either, so
wild.
Here we are.
That's wild. Okay, well, let's dig right in and talk about some other blasters that can hit around 120 FPS with a significantly larger spring. Probably the top news story this episode around is the Dart Zone Mark IV. That's definitely the thing that the most people are talking about. Dart Zone Pro Mark IV, I should say. And it is a primary class blaster that is supposedly the new flagship of the Dart Zone line. And we talked a lot about some of the design decisions that they made on it, and I have thoughts. I know I'm not the only one here.
Oh yes, I have thoughts on this one. All right.
Why don't we pick one thing to start with? The how you get it. So we've talked a lot about the pre-order system that Hasbro has been using for their direct sales Nerf Limited series, and it feels like Dart Zone is trying to emulate that experience with the limited color version of the Mark IV. And speaking for myself, the Mark IV looks cool. It's a cool blaster. I would love to own one, but I'm really put off by the pre-order system partly because I feel like I've been so burned by it in recent memories. How are y'all feeling about Anthony? I know you have you got the Mandalorian blaster, so like you've been hit with this this pretty hard. How do you feel about this?
Yeah. So I would have like I would have over 1,000 blasters due to this I guess addiction or hobby. You could call it either one.
It's both. It can be both.
the Mandalorian blaster has the distinction of being perhaps the only blaster I have returned. And I returned it, even though I talked about it with, I did a video on it, which is like a little bit ethically questionable. But I was so angry at it, I did it anyway. I returned it. I wanted the system to know how displeased I was, and I like everything. I am an easy mark. Like I'm into the Mark IV. I think it looks kind of cool. It's a different thing. I'm into everything, but that Mandalorian blaster I thought was real bad. And the pre-order stuff, I pre-order, if I'm actually pre-ordering to get something that is maybe going to be hard to get, fine. If I'm pre-ordering something to get something that I can still buy now way later than everyone else, that just feels like I'm kickstarting a major corporation.
Well, so because how does just a different color feel in regard, especially with the buildup that we had with the concept of the Dart Zone Vault, which they put, like, I've been saying this a bunch, like, it's cool to have a mailing list to hear about stuff from a company that you're interested in, but, like, it is just a mailing list. It is a marketing technique. It's one of these mailing lists that they sell like an elite club, but it is a mailing list.
Yeah.
What struck me as kind of annoying is they asked for basically the general place of where you live, which was kind of odd to me.
Right. Well, I mean, that's pretty common. They usually just use that for, I'm not saying I like it, but like it's just used for metrics. Like they want to find out where their strong audiences are. I would suspect that having run the Dart Zone Pro Tour, I could see them using that to try to determine where they want to establish future events, where they think it makes sense to like go to stuff, or where they feel like they don't have market penetration, so they want to go to more like toy shows or like try to put together stuff there. Doesn't mean I like it, but I see why they asked.
Yeah,
100%. Like I work for a marketing. I'm in a marketing department in my day job, and those sweet postal codes mean they can target people for forever. Yeah. So those are pretty valuable for that reason.
Well, I'm burned on pre-orders, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, the whole vault system just kind of feels like lackluster and underthought out, I guess, with how they market it. And the pre-order just doesn't make much sense, since you'll be able to buy it later. The only thing, like right now, since the Mark IV is the only new thing that they have in this so-called vault, it's basically just signing up for the potential to order a blue color of a singular blaster.
Right.
In the future.
And it's a pretty color. It's a pretty color.
It's a nice blue. It's just...
And I've said this before. So for anybody who doesn't know, I've talked about it in other places, but I worked for GameStop for years, and pre-orders were a very massive thing. A lot of times, because it's a pre-sale, that means that they're understanding their metrics for getting products, but usually they're trying to put something on top of it, whether it's added stuff, limited edition things, whatever it is. But obviously with Hasbro, we've been getting kind of burned with that. Obviously Mandalorian blaster being kind of a good example of that. And with Dart Zone, again, you're just being put on a mailing list that anyone can get on, which means there's not really a limit. It's just more of, are you on the mailing list? Well, then you can get one. It's not really like a first come, first serve, where only the first X amount of people who get it. So it's kind of like a rush, or it's kind of increasing that scarcity. And there's not really that drive. It's just kind of like, I'll get it if I want it. And that's really about it. It's not what pre-orders aren't what they used to be. Even not just say GameStop, or in this case, it doesn't matter. Most companies have kind of just fallen out of that, I've noticed, it seems.
Well, and it's not like, I don't know, like I can't imagine that they're trying to gauge interest in the product. It's like they're going to make the number that they're going to make.
Yeah.
At this point. Well, okay. So how about the blaster itself? How are we feeling about that? So the market for primary class Springers is a pretty big one now.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's also a pretty filled one.
It is. We have the Tryon recently, and we have Harrier. Some people are saying that this seems like a response to the Tryon or the Harrier, but knowing how long it takes to produce these products, it could be that they knew that they were in production in the other companies, and so they started on a response to it. But like, like, is this really an evolution of the 1.2? Like, it feels like it's a new, I don't know.
I would say it's weird.
Do we need another one? We need another one?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. For me, so here's the interesting thing. We've got our price point, right? What was it, 180?
Yeah,
$180.
$180.
For both models, regardless of the color, regardless of whether you're doing the special edition, they're all just $180.
Right, so they're $180. They are very reminiscent of Caliburns because of their size, their shape, the design of them. They are very, very much, Caliburn-esque. And to be honest, when I got my Caliburn 2 some odd years ago, it was about $180. They're roughly the same price of a kit blaster that was people's primaries for a long time before, obviously, later variants, smaller like Talon Claws, and then later on you got, Lynxes and stuff like that. But it is very much like that. Now, it is a tunable one. It's a very simple tunable. I am curious about the barrel setup in it.
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting, seeing it go down to 120 but up to 200, with some fairly quick stuff. And that's something I'm noticing more companies do, is the quick tuning, which is almost based on gameplay, which means one game you could tune it down to 120 and then within a few minutes, however long it takes, be ready to run a 100 FPS game, which is kind of interesting.
I like that a lot, but also, I have a Swift now. Swift is expensive, but like I got mine on sale, and it cost less on sale than this one cost new, and it can tune from like 300 down to like 120.
True.
So like, it's cool to see them catch. It feels like they're catching up.
Yeah.
On the quick tuning thing.
Yeah.
I have some comments on this, I think.
Okay.
Number one, I don't like the way that it comes apart in the back, because it's very similar to what the Worker Prophecy did, where they have the long spring and it goes into the stock. And the one thing that Worker did is they made sure that, yes, it's going through the end strike stock point, but there's thumb screws. Now, Dart Zone's doing that sort of, but they used regular screws instead of thumb screws.
Right.
Meaning you're going to need to get a whole other tool to completely to be able to actually disassemble the blaster.
It's true.
That's not my only complaint about the blaster, if I may.
That is a step back.
I have some thoughts on some of the design choices. Things like the front barrel extension. You have to choose between the longer barrel and the scar. They could have very easily put another thing on the front end of the barrel extension to let you put the scar on top of that, but they didn't.
I've been wondering about that. That seems like a weird choice to provide this scar, but not have it be compatible with each stage of the barrel extension.
Yeah, it's very odd to me. I'm wondering if the reason why is that the plunger volume is so large that the shorter barrel has such crap accuracy they needed a scar to hit the broadside of a barn. Because that's a thing that can happen.
I had kind of heard someone theorize that, because the only way a much longer barrel works with the Springer setup is if it has enough plunger volume to push it through the barrel. So they were suggesting that it might like have a lot of air coming out of it with the shorter barrel, so it needs a scar, and it might be tuned to be accurate specifically with the longer barrel in mind or something.
Well, and so here's a question that ties into another step in this process. This is coming with a new dart, and the new dart, the Bamboo 2X, is specifically a dart that is very slightly heavier than the previous version of the Bamboo dart, the Bamboo 2.0 or whatever. And their claim is that the extra, this is how darts work. The extra weight should increase accuracy by a little bit while decreasing overall power because it has a heavier thing to push very slightly. Do you think that they did that dart specifically to make up potentially for accuracy problems
I personally think it's also a thing of the original Bamboos, because I have the originals and they were just like magic darts, because I was getting 380 FPS on my Swift with that little dart. But the problem is that it's, 3/4 the weight of just about every other dart we currently use.
I remember, the original Bamboo darts were really, really popular, and I was kind of confused when they swapped them out for the 2.0, because the 2.0 seemed to be universally disliked for their low quality foam, their inaccuracy, and it really seems like they were mostly just to for marketing reasons to say, hey, we hit higher FPS with these darts,
and
or whatever.
I don't like that.
And I just went back to look at an old video because I remember people were saying that the original bamboos were actually really, really good. And checking the video, the original bamboo dart was 1 gram. It looks like.
And that's where I think these bamboo 2X darts completely fail, because they're in the right direction, but it's not like this is some unknown science where we don't know what weight works. We know what weight works. We know that around 1 gram or higher is good. That's what worker darts do. So why are they still going so low? Especially when they started out higher.
Theoretically, it's neat to consider a market and a hobby where we have room for a whole bunch of like specialized darts. Like in long darts, in full length darts, it's kind of like, well, you just kind of use waffles because like all the rest of them just suck. Like there's no, there are very specific circumstances where like if you don't want like a shotgun blast, it might be worth using elites or Busby darts just because they're so wild and unpredictable.
Stormtrooper challenge.
Exactly. But generally speaking, like there's just like a clear winner, and there isn't really a reason to use a specific dart type over another. With half darts, you're getting with most of the half dart blasters we're dealing with. I mean, and some people's blasters work better with certain ones than others for one reason or another, but like, it's neat at least to think that you would have a situation where it's like, well, because I'm trying to sharpshoot at a distance or whatever, like it makes more sense for me to use this dart, or like I'm going for maximum power for whatever reason and am less concerned about accuracy. Like maybe you have some objective based game, or something that maybe you would want a different dart type.
I was going to say when I played with fairly competitively down in San Diego with that group down there, the one thing that was really interesting was that they would do very close quarter games at 220 FPS up to 230. Very, very high FPS even for close quarters, which is, most people don't do that for a lot of reasons. But when you're looking at competitive games, higher FPS at short distances are good. So while these darts, I think this is a good split in the difference. It's not as light as the old ones at the 0.75 or whatever grams, but it's not as heavy as the workers, and they're able to kind of find a little niche for that, for people that might be doing close quarter, high FPS games where they want that, and the reason why they want that speed that you can't dodge it. So a lot of times when you see, because I'm here close to Foam Blast, a lot of them, they actually like to play at 130 and less. So that's 100 FPS difference. That is huge. But 130 FPS, I can dodge that at a certain distance after a certain amount of range. I can definitely dodge that. 230 or above that it becomes very, very hard. Now for distance, that becomes a problem. Obviously, the lower the dart weight, the less it's going to travel, or the more sporadic that dart's going to be. Even Jolt's mentioning that as well, about how the darts can just like fly wildly because they don't have that mass to them like they need to. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have it as an option, but it is going to be very, very unique on potentially the gameplay or where it's going to excel. And if nobody's playing that game type, then the community might just eat them alive and just rag on them for, well, better kind of a thing. And I think that might be the one issue that they went into later. But again, I think splitting the difference at putting it at 0.85, maybe that was to counter some of the issues they were having with the lighter ones, maybe being too sporadic in their accuracy.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that for these 2X that they fix the foam, because I think the lighter weight of the original the 2.0 bamboos could have been forgiven if the foam quality wasn't so terrible.
Yeah, we're pretty bad. I have some actually, even right here, they weren't the best.
Yeah, I have a couple nearby and they're not that great. Interestingly, I think it's almost as well as that they just kind of changed directions as what the bamboo dart was supposed to be, because I'm looking back at this video of like the old bamboo darts. The interesting thing to note was that bamboo darts actually got a lower FPS than ruby darts and embers, but they also had a higher minimum FPS, so they had a higher average, but they got lower maximum FPS. And
That's
worker
interesting.
darts actually, interestingly, had a higher average FPS and a higher max FPS as well. So the workers tended to be better for both high FPS and just better average overall.
Now I want to look at that in the context of the fact that Dart Zone just spent an entire podcast episode just talking about this dart, and see what they're saying now about it versus what they were saying then. Because like they're pretty outright about the fact that they've made a lot of their marketing choices around their ammunition, especially based around what the community is saying.
Number one,
which
darts,
is like
period.
Well, exactly, and like it's theoretically so. I mean, this is the whole thing, right? Is that I in the time that people were saying that Dart Zone's darts were the number one darts, we were still at the Worker Mark. We were either at the Worker Mark II dart or we were early in the Mark III darts, and they were having major glue problems. There was an era where Worker darts, the heads were just ripping off of them.
Oh yeah, early
Like,
worker
every
darts are
single time.
terrible.
They were crooked and all kinds of stuff too. They were really bad, which really messed up the action. Or even worse, they were cut crooked. I remember the foam being cut crooked even on the back of them. So they used to be bad.
Oh yeah.
So at the time, for a half dart that you didn't have to mail order to show up on the market, that were made consistently, it didn't actually matter if the performance wasn't even as good necessarily as like a worker dart. Like, they worked and you could get them cheap and you could get them immediately. And I feel like they became the number one dart because of that, more than because of their performance. They're not even bad darts overall.
No, they're really not.
Like, I've done plenty of games with them, but like, if you're really going to get into the nitty gritty of it and like do these like semi-scientific tests on darts, I don't know that they can back up that claim. It feels like it just came out, like it's just borrowed from the secondhand marketing they got out of the YouTube scene.
It's like AccuRival. You just have to claim it hard enough. Just claim it.
Right.
Make it
exactly.
Looking back at the old video I was looking at as well, it seems interestingly that the original bamboos were less accurate than AF Pros and Max darts and workers, but they were more consistent FPS wise than Max and Pros. So they still fell short of like the worker darts in terms of consistency FPS wise, but that was the advantage they had, was they were more consistent than their other offerings, but they were a tad less accurate, I guess, is what it looks like.
Interesting.
So it looks like the bamboo dart really has never been their most accurate dart.
Okay. I want to pull this back because we're talking again about the overall accuracy of the Mark IV and how that ties into it. I know Jolt had something else he wanted to say about the Mark IV.
The one thing I will say that is both a blessing and a curse is the size. This thing, from what we can tell, is enormous.
It is long.
I am 5'8" with not the longest arms. There is no way in hell I can properly shoulder that thing and be able to reach the pump grip comfortably. It's too long.
Jolt, are you saying you're not the everyman?
But basically but there's still a blessing here in that because of its caliburnoidness and whatever, it appears that it has a very, very light prime. You can see in the video, a guy is able to prime it with just the weight of the blaster.
Yeah.
They did mention in the podcast that was specifically with the 120 FPS spring and not with its heavier spring.
Yeah, but still.
That's still impressive.
It is cool. It is very cool.
Yeah, it is neat.
I definitely, one thing on the size of it, I definitely think, for example, without the barrel extension, it's right up my alley in terms of size. Like as a guy with lanky arms and whatnot, like that looks like it would fit me like a glove and whatnot, and that would be great. But I feel like even a tall guy like me and whatnot, using it with the FPS booster or whatever, I feel like it's too big to be practically used in a battle. Like I could probably use it just fine, and it would take some time, and I could use it, but it wouldn't be the most ideal thing. I'd rather, when you compare it to something like which of course isn't fair because it's a hobby design, but something like the Lynx, which is so much shorter, but has a barrel probably just as long. But that's more or less just the advantages of a bullpup over a conventional, so that's neither here nor there. But
I mean, this is kind of the argument of the Caliburn originally, because the Caliburn was quite a large, hobby blaster at the time with its design. And then later, the Talon Claw basically dominated afterwards because it shrunk the size of the Caliburn substantially. Mm-hmm. Like, it was substantial before we got the Lynx and the Bullpup. And that's what I mean is, like, this is almost like their variant of a Caliburn, where it's kind of weird to wield it because it's just so big.
Yeah.
Even if you're short and it can handle it. It doesn't matter. The thing is just how massive it is once you get all the barrel attachment on it.
They did say in the podcast that it is their version of a Caliburn, so it was their direct inspiration.
Right.
So I do wonder if that was just the only thing, and it just happens to now be in line with stuff like the Harrier and the Tryon and whatnot.
And the Swift. The Swift is quite large. Yeah, even the Swift is quite long. If you have it tuned all the way up and you have the full barrel and a scar on it, it gets to be quite, almost unwieldy as well. Obviously, it does have the adjustable stock. It's a little bit easier, I think, in some cases. But, we're seeing, it's kind of strange to see the hobby and even a large, name brand like Dart Zone getting into, the large blasters of days past kind of a thing. Like, it's surprising. We've got such smaller designs now.
Oh, sorry. I kind of wonder if there's like a little bit of doing that for like it's a blaster of the past to a lot of people currently in the hobby, but to like new people, it's like, oh, that's big. I want that one. Like I went to my first Nerf thing, and people are using Dart Zone stuff. I want the big sniper one.
I mean, you're talking about marketing earlier. You're not wrong, because
that does make sense
blaster,
from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah, that wouldn't be far fetched.
All the kids want to snipe, even it's like, well, this sniper blaster you like, it probably has more barrel drag and is slower. They want to snipe.
My most popular TikTok by a long shot is the one where I went through every blaster that you could call a sniper in my collection.
Yeah.
You've seen that, right? Where it was like, all right, well, I need to differentiate. Like, here are the toy snipers, and here are the ones that can actually hit at least 200 feet per second. But like, yeah, kids go nuts over.
I know even older audiences are really into that, because I know at my local scene, club that's a couple hours away from me and whatnot, there's a guy whose whole thing is that he's the group sniper, if you will, because as he described it, he's kind of old and slow and whatnot. So if he can't be fast like the young kids, he'll snipe and whatnot and get something that he can hit from the back end with. And so I know even older audiences are into stuff like that and whatnot.
Oh, there is a lot of just like that, the aesthetic of it too. Like I show a lot of stuff to like friends and stuff who are, patiently enjoy like my show and tell when we hang out, and definitely they gravitate for the people who aren't into like Nerf as a hobby and are probably not going to, but still play some games and stuff with me, like all the Dart Zone stuff. They're super into it. Like the Max Striker with like the barrel on the end. They're like, oh, look at that.
Totally. Yeah. Well, okay, no, this is actually a great opportunity to continue to do things out of the order that I intended, because we should totally talk about Cynthia right now. If we're talking about sniper aesthetic and about older like hobby members and older nerfers gravitating towards it, here we now have a blaster that is very much in that realm, although it's also a lot more than that, right? Because it's very configurable, but anytime you have like a rotating bolt action, that's what a lot of people are gonna think about this. What do y'all think of Cynthia?
I think it's cool. I like the simple design, honestly. It's a little brick-like, but not in a bad way. It looks good. Looks like a lot of fun to use.
I mean, with the brick though, the one thing I do like a lot of Silly's stuff is it's kind of open for people to kind of make whatever they want out of it too. And so if people want to, glam it up a little bit, make it look a little bit more interesting, it kind of can. So I do at least appreciate that. So if, it's a base to start with. And that's the thing I like about it. You have a simple design. As long as the functionality is there, you can kind of go nuts with it.
Yeah. I kind of also, I'm not the biggest fan of its aesthetic and whatnot, but it definitely is very much a Sillybutts blaster. You can kind of just tell by looking at it and whatnot. And I like that it's open source, so that way you can do stuff like that. The thing that I really like about it is, a lot of friends of mine that I know, the first thing they ask, like on our previous thing, is a lot of people gravitate towards snipers just for the glam aspect of it. And they'll ask like, oh yeah, what's the best Nerf sniper or whatever? And then when I show them something, they're like, that's not a sniper. I mean something bolt action and whatnot. Beforehand, really, the stuff you had was your Ranger, which is mega, and it's way outside of people's price budget a lot of times. And then you have your Indra, but the Indra, as I've used one up at Flux Labs, they kind of don't feel like they want to be put together and whatnot. They kind of feel like they hate their existence.
Speaking of which, you mentioned that this felt like an evolution of the Indra. Did he actually was any of this based on the Indra, or is it just...
actually, I believe in one discussion I had with him originally, Sillybutts, when he was getting started on designing, he did a bunch of upgrades to the Indra as file sets and whatnot, and so he was just taking all the stuff he had learned from that and putting it into a practical blaster.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
He had made a ton of fixes that you could do to the Indra to actually make it functional and whatnot. But it was kind of a lot of work and a lot of files you had to print off, if I remember correctly.
This is to the Indra. This is to the Indra as the red herring is to the piranha.
Yeah, basically. And I know a lot. Like I mentioned, I have some friends who are interested in it and whatnot. Like one in particular, he was like, "I know snipers aren't the most practical thing, but it pleases my brain from an engineer's standpoint because he likes a lot of little unique mechanisms and whatnot. So he'll be pleased with this blaster."
I feel like all my comments are like all aesthetic and just like pleasing your brain. But the Ultra Pharaoh, super popular blaster for anyone to try at any age. Like just cranking back that really long slide on it. And you know what? Like that was one of the things I thought was really cool about the Centurion way back when, not a perfect blaster by any means. And I won't be brave like Jolt and open it up. But like just that long slide, and especially on the Pharaoh, the bit of bolt action that it has, it's very, very cool. It's very fun to use. I pull that one out, quite a bit for like little battles and pretendy sniping.
And on that, I'm going to put this out here to worker, make metal gears for the Ultra Pharaoh. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it right now because I unfortunately blew up my gears on trying to.
Oh no! Well, and so this is one of the things we've talked about, especially when we were talking about like why gel ball is such a different sport from what we do. Play experience is such a big part, even at higher. Like, there's a reason that the slab exists. There's a reason that people still like the Chanier lever action for the Saturn. It's like, does this make the blaster better or more powerful or more no, but like it's still too strong to play with kids in most settings. But like play experience is such a big part of what we do and such a big part of what makes the sport so fun. It's why people make shell firing blasters that just shoot half darts, because just throwing shells is fun.
Very true.
That's such a big part of what we do, and so it makes a lot of sense to me to be into that, the look and feel of things. That I think that's great. I totally adore it.
Shells reminds me of the other recent notable rotating bolt action, the Kieran.
Oh yeah.
There's so many rotating bolt actions recently.
There's so many.
We got the Pharaoh and then Kieran and now this. I think
there was that one Fortnite blaster that was Mac.
Oh yeah,
the HR. I just my 1 minute review is kind of late on it, but it just came out. And I mean that was my review on it. It was like, it's a normal Nerf blaster, but guess what? It's like the only one that has a rotating bolt action, and it's fun and it feels good. So like, if you just want a Nerf blaster,
Busby's ahead
and you
of their
want to
time.
feel you want to feel like a sniper in your living room, it's this or the Mega SR.
Yeah.
Just depends on how big of a dart you want.
Completely leaving the Roblox Snake Sniper out of the discussion. Sadness.
I will leave that out of. There's a reason I left it in your basement. I will leave it out of as many discussions as possible. As previously stated, I wanted to leave it under a rock. I made a whole video about that.
It was a good video.
Now it's under my rock.
Thank you. Okay, I want to loop back to one other thing on the Mark IV before we move on. which is the magazine. And I have feelings about that. And especially like, we're talking about Cynthia, we're talking about more magazines using this existing. I feel like I obviously don't want to say Katana, but my mind literally just forgot the name of the magazines we all use. Talons. Thank you. Oh my God. What was that all about? We have this Talon infrastructure that I feel is very, very common. It's pretty much every hobby blaster comes out, uses it, unless it's like a mag and grip pistol, which, whatever's going on there. And Dart Zone, okay.
They keep changing their mags.
Right. They seem to
like 3 times.
According to the podcast, and again, they spent another episode of their it's an ad show. They spent another episode of their quote unquote podcast talking about just the Mark IV, which was interesting to get to hear like filtered thoughts, but thoughts about the production process for it. And they said that they did not use a dog bone pusher because the air restriction was too much for the light spring.
That actually is completely fair. A skinny pusher does restrict your airflow, and that does lower your performance.
It does. Yes, it makes sense. Although I also own a Spamp that does just fine with the skinny pusher.
As does the Tryon.
As is the Tryon.
I actually kind of had forgotten a point I was going to make about that that was kind of confusing to me about its whole thing. Because it's kind of like they talk about the fact that they were prioritizing airflow and whatnot, so they didn't use a skinny pusher. But at the same time, legally, they can only get a blaster to hit 200 out of the box before the categorization changes. So going for something that realistically only matters if you're going above that didn't make sense to me, because in my mind, it kind of made sense. If you were going to push all this hard stuff for airflow and other things, then what they may have been better served making a blaster that's more compact, that prioritizes airflow, that gets similar performance to some of their other offerings and whatnot, but with a light prime and like a shorter profile or something like that, similar to like a high performance Talon Claw, rather than going for this really over the top long blaster that ultimately just hits the same performance as the 1.2.
That is a really good point.
Here's the thing too. Doesn't the Caliburn, at least the modern one, use a skinny pusher?
Yeah.
Yes.
It does.
Yeah.
Because it's just like all of this effort, all of this big plastic, all of this molding, and all of this prioritization of airflow, but legally, it's never going to be able to hit what you designed it for. Right. So why not make it smaller?
I mean, theoretically, they're leaving the space for you to mod it up to that point.
Yeah.
But like, it's hard to know, like, who is the person who is buying the off-the-shelf blaster to mod to shoot 250 FPS or whatever, as opposed to the person who's doing their own like Caliburn build or whatever to reach those numbers. Like, who is that person in between?
At that cost as well, you can buy kit blasters and stuff like that. You can get something from multiple places of community built and community designed blasters just slightly above that price range or right around the same price range. That is going to hit harder. So again, why would you buy that when you're going to mod it?
You could buy 3 Tryons.
I guess it's kind of like, say for example, for whatever reason, you do get a hobbyist who really wants to mod it and take it apart. They would have been more likely to buy it had it had a skinny pusher in there, because it means then it's more compatible with all their magazines. Because you're less likely to find someone who's super into modding and also a Dart Zone nut who's completely exclusive to their ecosystem or something like that. If you're wanting to find someone who's really into modding, you're more likely to find someone who already has their own stuff and whatnot, and ways they want to use it and whatnot.
Now, has Dart Zone done a skinny pusher other than on the Pyroraptor?
I don't think so.
Yeah, not that I know of.
What did anyone else find that the Pyroraptor was a mess?
I have not been able to get my hands on one.
I had
Same.
so many problems with my Pyroraptor. Other people said that theirs were fine. So like, I'm not trying to say that that's conclusive. I had a lot of trouble with it, and it was all in dart feeding. And I can't say that it was the skinny pusher that was doing it, but I can't say that it wasn't. Anyway, so their solution to this problem, of course, is this new version of the magazine that may or may not be fully Talon compatible, but it has, from the pictures, it looks like it just has some slits down the side of the feed lips so that the things can bend a little bit to get around the pusher.
I'd be interested to know what the rated wear was that these were tested to and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
You can do this technically. If you get your Nexus Pro and you get a full-length magazine because the lips aren't as tight, that already technically works just like these magazines would. It's able to go in and out.
I've definitely pushed magazines in and out of that. Yeah.
I used to do that with my old Retaliator a couple of years back when I was younger. I never broke a mag, but it definitely didn't feel like it wanted to do that.
I'm sure.
It's because it doesn't.
Anyway, I don't know. I just question this partly because now it's like, okay, so like you've made this new magazine, and now if I buy my $180 Mark IV, I have one or two, however many it comes with of these magazines. It comes with two. Okay, so I have two of these magazines, and I have 40 Talons.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have these two magazines where I can put them into the blaster, and theoretically any blaster, and then all these Talons where I have to prime.
I suppose you could say it's not that big of a deal unless you like really have that muscle memory down, but it just is like.
There's two kinds of opinions on this. There's people who have been in the hobby for a long time and grew up with something like a Retaliator, where you learned how to use a mag-fed blaster with that, so you know to prime it back. I learned like that, and I'm hot-wired to do that. The only blaster that I don't still instinctively do that with is the Skewer, and that's just because how far away the priming handle is.
Right.
But then you get someone who just joined the hobby now, who's learning on a Nexus Pro. They don't necessarily think to do that.
I was gonna say like that is definitely like, and just like just from like running like a little arena space and doing like a few events here that like there's no scene here at all. So I get to see lots of people who aren't used to that stuff, and like no one knows how to put a mag in. I don't even have mag fed blasters in my like available like grab it off the wall part of the arena because no one can figure out how to use them.
I remember I used to frequent a local Nerf arena a lot, and they basically were like, magazines spell death, especially magazine-fed flywheelers. We do not stock them for reasons. We've seen a lot of things happen with magazines, and they just aren't worth it.
I don't make them available to kids ever. If I ever have kids over playing, they're just I don't get them out.
I don't even make them available to adults, KT.
Yeah.
I took my Swift over to show off to some friends of ours.
Yeah, I remember
adults.
the story.
Military members, by the way. Military. These are trained military individuals. I explained to them, you need to prime, and this is on my Swift, you need to prime it back before you insert the Talon mag in. And what did they do? Tried firing a shot, tried to pull the mag out, and just ripped the mag straight down. And yeah, I've got stress marks on my Talon mag because it just ripped the mag straight down. This is a full-grown adult. Mags are. It doesn't matter your age demographic, and if they are new to the hobby, it's just it's a bad combo.
Oh my God. Okay, well, speaking of expensive mags that you would really not want someone to do that to.
Yes.
I pretty much just want Vile to babble about this because I know you've been extremely excited about the new half dart drum mag. Just go.
Yes.
Just go. Just take it.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know, Ezekiel creates, or Easy, who's done actually a lot of really good stuff, has been working on trying to get this drum mag up and running for a long time. It is a very complicated system. I'm going to say right now, if you want to load this thing, it's like reading hieroglyphics because So interestingly enough, to try to help people with loading this mag, Ezekiel actually put the entire sequence in pictures on the side of the actual, like, straight portion of the mag, like the actual neck of it. And everybody's like, wow, that looks like hieroglyphics. I have no idea what I'm looking at, because it's a very fascinating design. I highly suggest looking at the videos. It's very hard to describe how the whole thing works and why it needs to load in a particular way. But it basically has it has a clock spring. Basically, it gets tighter the more, that you clock it in and put more darts in. But what happens is that the problem with, like, most of our mags, right? Like, I just got the 50 round Titan drum, 35 round drums, 25. It doesn't matter. All the drum mags always have tension on the darts. And that's one of the biggest problems that we've always had in this hobby. And what Ezekiel has created is this interesting setup that actually locks, and it does not put any pressure on the darts until you unlock it. So there's these feeding arms in a particular way that it has to feed. That's why, again, there's a whole loading sequence to it. It's fascinating to watch it go, because I think with some, like, testing and stuff like that, I believe Ezekiel said you could get to 100 darts a second on it of feeding capability, which is insane. But has actually tested it and printed it and then bent the feed, the holding lips on the top of there that hold the darts in, just broke them back and then just unlocked the spring, and then the darts just shot out, and then timed it based on how many frames it took to actually eject all of the darts out. And it was somewhere in that range. It was very, very crazy to watch. But yes, they are quite expensive. They're all 3D printed. There's a lot of hardware. Ezekiel even went to the extent of creating a expansion spring for the follower that is on it, and created a CNC jig that actually bends those to length using an old, I think it was an Ender 3 3D printer. So actually created the G code, actually the whole thing. Like, it's, again, I'm going to recommend going and just checking out Ezekiel's Facebook page. Ezekiel does post it on his YouTube, but his Facebook page is probably the most active if you're interested in seeing kind of the development of this thing. I might have 2 of them on order.
Not surprised here.
I have, and so
wait, which colorways did you get?
Okay, so there are 2 different options you can get. You can buy the full kit that has the key. There's a key that actually goes with clocking it to feed it. So I got that one. It's pretty basic colors. It's like grays and black and like white in some of the colors. And then I got the kit that is the outer shell, and I went with a black, and then I have the other parts, the purple and the lime green, of course. And the best part is that you receive them in a kit, so I can kind of mix and match parts as, and colors as I see fit, which is also really nice. And but there's also 2 variants. I went with a 51 dart capacity and a 55. And the reason why is because, and even on the page, it'll tell you to measure what blaster you want to use it on, because it would be better for the actual body of the magazine to sit close to the blaster and not hang down excessively long. And Ezekiel had to make a longer neck on it for, I think it was the Woozy, if I'm remembering correctly. There was one in particular that had a very, very long, like, stem to it, and it was, I'm again pretty sure it was the Woozy. So I got the 55 for that reason, and then the 51 I got for a current project that I'm working on, which I think everybody should know what it is, because it's been on news segments, and I've basically been working on it.
It's been around for a little bit.
You're going to put the drum in that?
I mean, I am. It is full auto, and
it is the overkill. It is the overkill pistol, so...
Now, it's mostly, it's not for the actual, like, design of it. It's more of like, if I'm going to run this thing, I want to actually have a mag that has the capacity. So that was why I got them. It was just to make sure I had the capacity for that blaster. So
Remember, Vile, 1 mag, 1 tag.
Exactly. That is the point here. That is the point.
I was going back to kind of check some stuff on Easy, because I kind of remember Easy just kind of busted out into the scene one day unannounced with the Auto Prime long shot kit. Everyone was just like, holy crap, what the hell?
Yes.
And then all of a sudden after that it was just like bam, then there was the Chronomag kit, and then there was bam, and then there were the Talon mag adapters, and then all sorts of other stuff. He just
Easy's
really makes a lot of cool stuff for a college student.
Yeah, Easy is a college student. I'm pretty sure engineering, which would make a lot of sense based on the stuff that Easy's done. But the parts that Easy has made, a lot of them are SLS nylon printed. So I have the Chronomags as well. A lot of the parts are really well done, very well thought out. The kits are very simple. Yeah, I know I'm just sitting here promoting Easy, but I'm sorry. The stuff that I've got, I'm very, very happy with it. And they are a bit pricey. I'm always going to tell people they are pricey, but you're getting it from Singapore. These are, custom parts. There's a lot of, again, SLS nylon parts are not necessarily cheap. And then hardware kits with a lot of it too, if it needs or requires the hardware. So.
I have a friend who has one of their knockout kits, and it's actually really, really nice. It's a lot nicer and more well thought out compared to some of the more rudimentary knockout kits that are out there. Yeah,
I can definitely say, and same thing, the Chronomag kit's really nice. I found out, I'm going to say this real quick, Jolt knows, I have the last of Ezekiel's N-Strike yellow filament for Chronomags. I got 3 Chronomag kits, all with the yellow, and Easy actually emailed me and said, thank you for finishing off that roll. I am discontinuing N-Strike yellow, which means I got the last.
It saddens me that it's not a popular color.
I know. So I got the last of the N-Strike yellow filament that Easy offered.
That's pretty cool.
Come on, people. Can we get some more love for the yellow?
I'm sorry, Jolt. I'm sorry.
You provide plenty of the love for the yellow,
Jolt. That's very true, Jolt.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jolt. I'm more partial to red.
Yes, we know.
I'm excited to get one of those as well. I ordered one as well. I was.
Oh, really?
I couldn't not. It looked.
Did you? What configuration size did you go? 51 or 53?
I like had a panicky dither about which one to get. Because I also was like, well, I don't want aesthetically. I don't want part of me was tempted to get the longest one just for maximum compatibility into the future. But I'm like, no, I don't want it. I ended up going with the shortest one because I was thinking I was going to use it in I wanted to know if it would fit in my Mark III. I ordered his rate of fire, the Mecha rate of fire kit as well, just because I upgraded my other Mark III with a Kraken, and it was has been the nightmare mod of a century. So I have a second Mark III, and that one's just going to get the mechanical advantage.
I will say one other thing about Ezekiel. I ordered the original Mecha rate of fire, and Ezekiel updated it after people had tested and found a flaw. Ezekiel updated it.
I remember I know my buddy Bobo did a video on it, and then he was like, oh yeah, thank you for all the critiques and whatnot. I'll make sure to update these into the design and whatnot. And he was just so impressed that was just oh yeah, this guy, I just reviewed this guy's product, and then he just updated it after I critiqued it. It was, and he thought it was
he didn't
cool
just update it. The one thing I noticed it with Ezekiel had me destroy the parts. So I cut them in half on my bandsaw, sent Ezekiel a picture. I got new parts sent to me, the updated parts.
That's so cool.
So Ezekiel, I will say, is really big because, and the reason why was because on a Facebook post, basically, when this came up, was he did not want inferior parts of his out in the wild. So the only way he would replace them is if you destroyed the original parts first, and then he would send you the updated parts. So that way, basically, whatever you had is the updated, better part.
That's just a cool way of doing
it. It kind of is. I was really surprised. I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And I just went out and cut them on my bandsaw real fast.
Bandsaw time, boy.
Personally, I would have
cool.
gone for the sledgehammer, but
whatever. It's
whatever works. Whatever works.
I in my case, am not going to be getting one of the drums for two reasons. One, of course, being I am a forever, eternally broke. But even if I wasn't, the reason is actually, unfortunately, due to the design, as Ezekiel mentions on his website, lower rate of fire stuff or with weak pusher retraction force are unlikely to be compatible with it. And for flywheelers, a lot of what I use is strifes with stock pushers and whatnot. And so it just wouldn't be compatible with the kind of stuff I'd be interested in using it with, because I've never been one for high rate of fire or anything like that.
I was thinking this is such a great. I'm glad to hear that Anthony's getting one, actually, because just watching all the videos that you have of like people coming over and experiencing your space and the stuff that you have, all the like rapid fire stuff you let people try out, just like shooting their parents or whatever. To have now a 50-round short dart drum to use in those things is
for sure
sounds pretty amazing.
And that's kind of like, it's funny because I know I saw in a video you were talking about how you don't have a lot of high rate of fire stuff, and I totally get it from a practical standpoint. Like I usually use semi-auto if I'm actually trying to win a battle, but I also have a great love just for showy stuff, because it is fun. Like if I run a party or like do a thing, like that's one of my favorite parts is like, here, try this matrix fire, try this modded D-dart, try like a proton pack or whatever. Like I don't know that I would ever run a proton pack in any sort of like battle, maybe in my space now because I have like a netted in space and I can 100% recover the ammo, right. But like it's definitely not practical, but like a lot of my favorite things are not practical, so that's okay. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that'll be fun. It'll be showy.
It's more or less for me just kind of like a assurance thing, because I know if I got my hands on something high rate of fire, I'd be mag dumping all the time and my room would go from being a mess to a pigsty, and I don't want to have to deal with all the darts being all over the floor and walking in darts and whatnot. The one concession to high rate of fire I've made is that again, back to my friend Bobo, I eventually want to commission a 3-switch rapid strike from him, and that'll probably be the one high rate of fire thing I get. Other than that, I'm trying to stay away from it so that way my room doesn't get even more messy.
That makes sense. That's reasonable.
See, for me, I just don't like mag dump because I don't know, it's just not necessarily my thing. That's why my rapid strike has an undervolted Valkyrie for the pusher, so it only gets like 6-7 DPS.
I have 2 kids that like to shoot stuff. Guess who has to fill the mags? You think they're gonna do all of it? No. Okay. Let's move on. It is time for our game. Name That Blaster, where we let me refocus here. I got this. Okay, Name That Blaster. This is a game that we play where one member of the team picks a blaster, generally off the Nerf wiki, and reads the description with some words strategically removed. And the rest of the crew guesses what the blaster is. A correct guess, everybody on the guessing side of the team guesses without using any lifelines. They get 4 points, but if they're not sure what it is, they can ask the original release year of the blaster, the original retail price of the blaster, or the original stock capacity of the blaster. And for each of those, you lose 1 point, but you gain some information that may help you find out what it is. Someone had suggested in the comments, I think it might have been Axel, that when we have a guest, that we have the guest pick the thing. Although I realized that if the guest picks it, then we all either just get the same number of points or no points, and the game doesn't progress. So I think I'm actually going to reject that and just continue to have the guest be part of the guessing thing. So you have the opportunity to pick up some points here. Yes. It is my turn to pick. The score is currently me with 11 points. Vile has 10 points. Jolt has 15 points. Grim has 7 points, but Grim also entered the game late. So
very late at that.
But yeah, you are also, though, still awfully close to Vile's score. Jolt is just ahead of everybody because it's Jolt. So I have a blaster description to read, and as usual, you can freely discuss and then eventually decide to take lifelines or lock in a guess.
Cool.
Is everybody ready?
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. This blaster is awesome for quick loading and rapid firing. Sharpen your skills and achieve battle superiority with a quick firing rotating barrel. Line up your shot and prepare for, quote, battle, unquote. Simply slide, lock, and load your way to blank victory. Blank is a series name, and I left that out because that would give it away.
Could you read that again?
Yes, it is short. I will read it again. This blaster is awesome for quick loading and rapid firing. Sharpen your skills and achieve battle superiority with a quick firing rotating barrel. Line up your shot and prepare for, quote, battle, unquote. Simply slide, lock, and load your way to blank victory.
Slide, lock, and load is what's interesting.
I'm actually stumped on this one.
Oh.
Oh, no.
No
You
way!
did it.
No
You finally
way!
stumped me.
You finally got it. KT, how did you do it?
Woo!
I know it's obviously, it sounds to me like it's some kind of drum-powered flywheeler, so that does narrow it down to things like the Mastodon, or the Fearless Fire, or the Incisor, or even the Ultra One.
Where it says slide, lock, and like, I mean, are there a lot of liberties with language? Is this some sort of top prime? Is this an old dart tag blaster or something with that rotating thing on the front? Are they just saying weird words?
It could be, yeah, you're right. It could even be like a Swarm Fire or something.
Right. I know in my example, there's no actual locking.
I think the one you were talking about is I think it was called the Dart Tag Hyperfire or something like that. The one with the top prime.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have to use a lifeline here. So let's think about this.
Capacity.
Capacity
I think
would definitely be the one.
Yeah, capacity will be the giveaway. Or would it? Because here's the thing. Some of them are similar capacities, because, like, now that I think about it, that's really tough. We'd have to remember, do we actually know the exact capacities of all of those drum feds? Because I know Swarmfire is 20, Mastodon is 24, Ultra One is 25. I'm not sure I remember how much the Fearless Fire was. Or the Incisor, for that matter. I've not had experience with either of those blasters.
I have the Incisor. I think it was like 12.
It was more than 12.
Yeah, it's a bit more. I think
12.
it might be 20. I'm looking at it. It's like, I don't know if it's legal. I could go count if we get there.
It's right next to me, so I can go check it.
If it's physically in your room, you can interact with it. That's fine.
Look, I don't want to go out to my garage, all right? But because I have all of these sitting in a pile.
I like a chat where we can talk about a random blaster and we're all like, oh yeah, it's right here. I like that.
That's what we do.
So I think that we should probably take the capacity lifeline.
Unless it's the judge.
Is that an agreement to take the capacity lifeline?
Yeah, I'd agree.
Okay, I'm going to take that as official.
Yeah.
The original stock capacity is 6.
Oh,
So it's
interesting.
So it's a revolver of some kind. Or
6
wait,
is the
was
capacity.
the Rebel crossbow that had that revolver section on it? Was that 6?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think
Here's
it was.
the thing: the language here makes me think that it's. Wasn't it saying it was like supposed to be rapid fire?
Yeah, but the way that it's.
But remember, he had also mentioned the fact that prepare for blank battle, and he said that he omitted it because that was the line name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It could also be the Ultra 2.
So I doubt it would be.
I'd be happy to read it again.
Prepare for rebel battle or something.
I'd be willing to read it again if you want.
Okay.
It was well, yeah, okay, so this blaster is awesome for quick loading and rapid firing. Sharpen your skills and achieve battle superiority with a quick firing rotating barrel. Line up your shot and prepare for, quote, battle, unquote. Simply slide, lock, and load your way to series victory.
I think it's the Ultra 2.
Ultra 2. Yeah,
I still don't know why battle is in quotes. I think that's hilarious.
That's going to be my official guess, is the Ultra 2. because of the capacity, and it's clearly trying to say it's a higher rate of fire thing. And think about it, like if you're supposed to like slide it in,
like it's supposed to be easy loading. That's the whole thing with the Ultra 2 is that it's easy loading.
True.
Let's go with I'll go with Ultra 2 as well.
I don't know what the locking is, but I agree. I think it is probably the Ultra 2.
All right. Is that universal agreement? Are you locking in that answer?
I think so.
Yeah, I think I will go with that too.
You are incorrect. That is not the Ultra 2. I'm going to go ahead and read the other two lifelines for anyone guessing at home to have an opportunity to get it first. The average retail price is $8.99 USD, $14.99 Canadian for those of us in the chat who speak in those terms. The original release year was 2005.
Is it a Maverick?
Oh,
The correct answer is the N-Strike Maverick.
oh no!
That's what the lock and loading is.
Yeah.
I cannot believe of all the blasters that I stumped Jolt with.
Rapid fire, my God, that's a good one.
We lost.
So here's the thing.
Ubiquitous Maverick.
For the time, that was rapid firing.
That's incredible.
That was rapid fire.
The
Like
Mag Strike existed.
that. Well, I mean, sure, but like it. You can see how their marketing is rapid fire because it had, I get it, but obviously in a modern context, that's not what it is.
Yeah, we've gotten too used to our fast rates of fire.
I suppose these last two name that blasters have gone to show that it doesn't have to be the most difficult thing to come up with to really stump us.
I mean, honestly,
the last time we really squirmed over as to whether it was called the Captain Phasma blaster.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
congratulations, KT.
Thank you.
You finally did it. The very first time.
I'm pretty proud of this choice. I actually, before I chose this one, I looked at the recon and the I was looking at other just like really obvious blasters to be like, what do these descriptions look like? Anyway, I won't say anything about them because someone may want to use them in the future. But so nobody earns any points, and that potentially next time Jolt picks next time. So if I can be on the team that actually gets 4 points on a Jolt guess, I can catch up with Jolt.
Yeah, you
Also,
might be able to overtake me.
As for the earlier question as to the capacity of the incisor, the capacity is 20.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on, I want to talk really, really fast about one small topic that did not make it onto the show, but I still thought was interesting. JSPD released a new alternative grip for one of their blasters. I don't even know what the blaster is. Does anyone know what the blaster is?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Let me go check the...
Yeah, just look it up and we can
I'm gonna
insert...
look the spreadsheet. I can probably tell after checking the spreadsheet.
Okay.
JSPD print grip. It looks like it's for one of their old pistols, but they've had so many of them. I'll see if it's still one that's available on the site. They've had so many pistols, and like
they kind of have.
That makes the story even weirder. Okay, well, here's the thing that's interesting about this. The idea of it is it's a skeletonized grip that you can mold. What material do they suggest? Is it just clay? Like what is the material?
Putty, isn't it?
Putty,
like
right?
Epoxy putty.
You mold putty into it to create your own grip shape, and you can literally just like wad a bunch on there and like grip it and squeeze it into the right shape, and then let it dry to make your own grip. And that is such a clever idea.
I mean,
Am I wrong?
I've heard of people doing that on the Messenger, which was, the cheese grater grip as well. Right. And actually, if you look at the pictures of this one, it's like it removed a couple of those and then, sort of
well,
does that. Actually,
I was going to say, couldn't we just do that with Alpha Strike blasters?
I was actually just going to say,
yes.
even on the Messenger, maybe we could just cut out some of those ribs and just do something similar. Because I'm actually thinking about it like, That's actually not a bad idea.
If only those blasters were worth saving.
I mean, some of the Rebel stuff is that has those.
Hey, I like my messengers.
I meant the Alpha Strike
You could
stuff.
also
the messengers are great. I meant the Alpha Strike crap.
Here's the thing, though. If the Alpha Strike grips give you an opportunity in this way to make whatever grip shape you want, maybe it's now worth integrating those grips onto other blasters and then doing this.
So I found the blaster. It took me a while because they have so many different random projects. It's called the JSPD Itchy Man. And its hardware kit is $10. It is a 3D printed blaster.
What? Okay. It's just, what a bizarre story.
Yeah, it's just like it's for a blaster that they released a while ago, and it's like one of many pistols they've made because they have like the Ninja Spring, the Urban Ops, the JSPB G5X, they have the Battle Planet, they have...
All right, well, all I want to say is shout out to JSPB for this really cool concept of the grip with the clay on it. Obviously, it comes from people doing this previously on other skeletonized grips, but like I'd like to make sure that idea stays out in the open because I would love to see someone do something ridiculous like I said, merge an Alpha Strike grip onto something so you can put your own shaped grip onto it. I think that would be hilarious and cool.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, let's move on to our main topic of the night that we are excited to have our guest here to pick brain about. The Gauntlet XL. Now, I have enjoyed... Vile was talking about watching this drum magazine come into fruition. I have been keeping an eye on the Gauntlet XL as it went from being a bunch of stuff glued to a panel on your wrist, Anthony, to a really cool looking... I mean, it was cool looking then, but for very different reasons. 3D printable, flywheel, Mega XL. I guess we would... in the episode I referred to it as a linear hopper. It's a 2-round linear hopper, right?
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah. Which came from, and one of the reasons there are so many videos, and it took probably longer than it could have, is Marcus and I, Foam.blasted, we tried so many things with a magazine, and I'm like jumping into like the great failure during the project. That's a weird way to talk about project.
I want to hear about this because I'm so curious about how this collaboration worked between the two of you.
Yeah. I'll just finish my. So like the reason that the like it has this like kind of I'll rewind after, but the reason it has this kind of this hopper, linear hopper or like gravity fed magazine is we made a magazine that worked great, but it just Mega XL darts suffer from the same thing as Mega darts do, and that as they get that big, the ultra consistency kind of goes out the window because I don't think Hasbro is really expecting people are going to be doing exacting things with it. So it has a flywheel pusher because around the time I was working on it, everyone was going crazy for like the modded Matrix Fire. I was like, I'll just put a wheel in there. That'll be simple. That'll make it easy. And the balance of like the weight of the darts and a pusher wheel. And I'm actually like fidgeting with like a Mega XL dart that basically has like no neck because it's just been like shaved in all these different places from testing. So, and in the end I was like, what are we, and we talked about like just changing to like a regular pusher, like we thought about solenoid, but it's like it's so much weight, like even under a light spring load of a magazine, like that was just enough to just make it such a nightmare. We did eventually get it working, but not consistently, and I was like, why are we making a project not fun to be able to make a magazine that holds like 4 or 5 darts when we can when really it fires so fast that it's also like pretty much full auto. So it just kind of, I was like, why don't we do something that's like short, open on the top, so you're just like slamming darts into the top of it from like a bag or whatever, and it's basically like a one dart at a time shotgun. Like it's not really meant to be like, oh, I that's why it only has like, I do have like there are other amounts that it'll fire. Like I have a test 4-dart one-on-one now in front of me, but like I actually think.
But it's like, what's the difference between spending a half a second shooting 4 darts as opposed to a quarter of a second shooting 2 darts?
For sure, like I actually think the 2-dart one is better, and it's already pretty cumbersome. So like 2 darts is shorter and probably better. I just have some bigger, longer mags for the lulz.
Yeah, because realistically, the way I could see this being used, speaking of some local games, I know that I think if I remember correctly, I don't get to go up there very often, is that Mega XL bust shield. So I could totally see someone just wearing this on their arm as like a quick burst to take out a shield or something like that if one shows up and whatnot, and just carrying it on you, because it doesn't get in the way of much at all. So it wouldn't be that hard to just carry it on you and whatnot and have like a small burst Mega XL.
Yeah, and that was kind of like the goal. Like, and just to be like, I like Mega XL. I like silly stuff as well. So I don't know. Like that's kind of where it came from. Like I like the idea of, and it's something that there's not a lot of things out there for it. So I was like, oh well, that'll be kind of neat.
As far as I'm aware, this is the first Mega XL flywheeler I've seen.
Yes.
I've seen someone use rival wheels set really far apart, but that was they just made a cage and that's all they did with it.
Yeah, there've been some some kind of prototypey stuff with like a Hot Wheels track and stuff like that. And Domachevsky has like that.
Oh wait, yeah, the Hemavold.
The shell.
Right. That's right.
We just talked about that on the show.
I just it completely blanked because I forgot that Domachevsky's done some stuff like that too.
All right, so now what you got to do is you got to get a Hemavold and then get 2 of these.
I know, right? I know. I actually was like just fortunate enough to like be able to get a motor tier. So, but I feel like that's probably my Domachevsky budget for this year or so. But you were asking kind of about the collaboration aspect of it and working with Marcus. And I definitely want to talk about that because like because I do all the talking and have no problem cranking out every thought I have into a video format. Definitely very much a partnership, and like all of the good looks of it and like the aesthetics that I love are definitely all Marcus, and lots of ideas. Like we did a lot of it's been really neat. Like we did a lot of stuff where definitely some drawings back and forth, or I would kind of kludge something together, or do like a Tinkercad version of something and be like, hey, this could kind of work, and then he would come back with something that's like, oh, that's really, really good. Like the Gauntlet can actually be a pistol as well. Like so I did like a Tinkercad thing where you can slide the rev trigger that's on your wrist into like a grip, and then you could kind of use it as a pistol. And he took that and made like this really nice looking grip, and you put the trigger paddle in upside down, and then when you mount it to the bottom of the blaster, like it makes this really nice 2-stage trigger that kind of looks really good, I think. So like there's been a lot of kind of nice like being surprised by a much better version of an idea that you had. And yeah, Marcus he's a super talented guy. Like he makes a lot of, he's like, even he was nice enough to like do so much work on this stuff while doing all sorts of like passion projects of his own. So it's been pretty neat.
Yeah, I remember when he around when he like sort of first appeared and started doing stuff. He sent me files for a Battle Scout clip. You went back and forth with him on that one too. And I remember at one point I got him to send me a modified version of it that made space to put in brass. And so I have this one brass Battle Scout 3D printed clip. That's totally ridiculous. But like, I really appreciate that he did, like, what's his motto is like, every blaster deserves a chance. Like, I love that he digs into these like obscure blasters and is like, how can I make this passable? And
extremely based. Extremely
it's so
based.
good.
That's very cool.
I'm in the same boat. I'm like Jolt. Like both of us love getting old blasters and doing weird stuff, and I can appreciate somebody who has that same passion.
Mm-hmm.
I love seeing it done. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, for sure. Like I printed off the thing. Like he did a bunch of work on the Ranger, and made a piece that you could add an O-ring to it, and added some other little, bits and stuff. Like it's cool. What I think is cool too is it's doing a lot of stuff to blasters that like other people aren't really doing, because maybe they don't care to do it. But that's usually some of my favorite stuff. And I think a lot of people do care once they see it. Like they're like, oh, hey, that's kind of interesting.
Wait, he made stuff for the range. You're talking about the Elite 2.0 Ranger?
I am, yeah.
What? Oh, I didn't know about this. I need to know about this.
I think I remember. I think this was him. It was like a little crossbow front end for like the X-Shot Micro, and it was really adorable.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Who would think to do that?
That's so good.
But it's so cool.
That's so funny too.
This kind of gives me this feeling that the guy more cares about making stuff that's fun over what's profitable, and I think that's really cool and a really good thing to see in a
100%.
hobby shop.
Or at least fun over like functional. I would really love this stuff to be like profitable. I feel like this is such an important, like we were saying before, this is such an important part of the hobby. Like feel and fun is such a big part of what sets us apart from airsoft and gel ball and paintball. Like we can and do play with such goofy things. And those sports generally do not.
Yeah, like I mean, I always think like whenever I post anything on TikTok, it's when I wade through the comments of airsoft, bro, why don't you just play airsoft? Or my personal favorite, when I'm talking about like playing a fun game with friends and people are like, you should just buy a Glock. I'm like, oh, okay.
Right.
But, yes, because that's how I.
Yes.
Me and my friends just go out with our Glocks and we just, fire them off willy nilly, no problem.
Yep, and it's like, oh yeah, I can just, let me go pick up my spent bullets and whatnot and reload them into my gun and see how well that goes.
Yeah.
Well, and it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear.
Yeah, it is.
Who just wants to own stuff and feel like they have power, as opposed to actually going out and doing stuff.
For sure,
with people,
like
and
most
having
of those
social
comments, I feel like aren't even people who play anything. It's just like
no, absolutely.
They're just
not.
like, oh, I want that. Like the thing I love about foam or nerfing or whatever you call it is like to me all the different calibers. Like the fact there is Mega XL, like that's fun. Like I love working objective stuff into games where like, hey, you need to like one of my favorite games I've ever played is I ran a birthday party for like a 36-year-old friend and we rented out. We had access to a building and I hid a boom dozer in the building and the rest of us were just like Terminators who could only walk. He had a 60 the 60 round rival blaster, not the
Percy's?
Hades.
The Hades. Why can't I remember the name of it? He had a Hades, and that would stun us for like 3 seconds, and he had to like search through the building. And he's not someone who plays like no one at this party like played a bunch of this stuff. I was just getting into it heavily, and they're like, that would be fun. And he said after, he's like, I've never been so stressed. He's like in a stairway, like hitting two of us and like squeezing between us while we're counting out loud, and he's like running around going like, where did you put that boom dozer? But like that stuff, you can't do that in a lot of other hobby stuff. And I'm not saying it to be like, oh, one thing's better than the other. Like there's no such thing. They're all,
they each have their own merits and whatnot, and they're for different kinds of play.
Like I could have a ton of fun. Like if I was invited to go play airsoft with people, I would have a ton of fun and a great day. It's just like, to me, it's harder to even orchestrate going, even thinking of like going to play. It's like, well, where are we going to do that? Where am I going to like? It's all fun, but I love the accessibility.
And it has to do with the people. It's about the people. It's always about the people ultimately. So what was your like sort of nitty-gritty of your collaborative process? Were you just like sending?
It would kind of vary from bit to bit, right? Like I did some stuff at first, like when I did that like Iron Man toy thing, like just to work out the crush and stuff. Like I actually took one of his cages from a barricade because I printed off a couple extra ones. I was like modding a barricade, and I like just cut it apart and like did some thing, like screwed it on just to figure out the crush, and like sent him a lot of pictures with a digital caliper to send like measurements of like this and that. And
actually, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
What is the crush? that you figured out?
You totally can. I'm gonna sound like a big dummy here, but I don't remember. I don't remember.
Okay.
I
was like, I know there's someone listening to this podcast who's like, I want to build something.
No, and I would share it with people. Like I would definitely share it with you. I honestly don't recall. We changed it at one point to make it, and like, because I literally like did not go very scientifically with the crush. I literally like drilled some holes and like mucked around with it, and then we got to one point where we actually tightened the crush to try to solve our magazine problem, because we thought if the crush was tighter, and we eventually moved the pusher wheel up so that it was pushing the rubbery head of the dart instead of the foam, so we weren't digging in, which like is obvious if you think about it, but I didn't do that at first. It was all like, how do we get that dart to have to travel the least amount as possible? And we tightened the crush, and then like I did like a couple test firings. It was like, oh, that's in the 90s. We'll just leave that there, even though we're not doing, because it's just goofy, and it's you'll wear out. Like I feel like my darts are not, my Mega XL darts are like, they're wearing a bit, but even my most worn darts still fire through it. So I have my collection of Gauntlet darts. They'll last a long time.
So that's another question. I noticed you posted, I think you posted just today, that you realized the FPS limit for Mega XL at Maryland Mayhem is below where this was firing on 3S.
Hilarious.
And so
yeah.
You were just putting was this the first time you would put 2S into it?
It was like, yes, it was the first. And so, you would think.
Hold on, I just realized I'm talking about LiPo batteries. Not everybody listening to the podcast may know what I mean, because we haven't talked about LiPo this entire episode. Yeah, you were using 3S LiPo batteries that run at like a little under 12 volts, right? And you just tried a 2S LiPo battery, which is lower.
Yeah, and I hadn't tried 2S in quite a while since we changed the crush. Actually, it seems like an obvious thing to try, but like honestly, I like the silliness of like it hitting harder. So honestly, that whenever I was in my basement test firing, I was doing that. I might have I think I did some tests on like just using like a nickel metal hydride rechargeable, but I hadn't actually tried 2S and chronographed it. So yeah, that 2S took it down under 80. So that, like, I was going to put in, oh my goodness, my brain, it is late here too. I was going to put in like a little a buck
converter
to just like, I was going to turn it on the volt. I was going to do, and I'm like, why am I being dumb? I can just put in less battery. The solution to most problems is like less battery or more battery, depending on, like, not too much more if you're not doing the switches and stuff, but like,
right.
I've modded a ton of stuff to like 9.6 volt nickel metal hydride, or like just like adding 2 AA's to standard Nerf blasters. And there was a time where I was like, oh, like, and this is not against Dart Zone, but I was like, oh, the Spectrum, it's like such a better, superior design. It hits so much harder. But I'm like, nah, you put 2 more batteries in any Nerf blaster, and it's probably doing similar. So just a little more power.
What?
Yeah, increasing, like, even just on alkalines. I did this to my Ultra 1, where that one is underpowered compared to the other Ultra flywheelers, because it runs on 4 Cs instead of the traditional now 6 AA's. So I just made mine run on 8 AA's, and now it hits like 130.
Yeah, I did a battery mod to my Ultra 1 as well. I'm actually you'll like this, Jolt. I'm gonna be going all Ultra for the HVZ when I go to it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be the Ultra guy. I might have I got a little appropriate costume for the Ultra experience to go with it. So I'm pumped about it.
This battery stuff takes me back to when I first entered the hobby, back when we were using stuff like Trust Fires and IMRs and whatnot. All that kind of battery voodoo that was not very safe and whatnot.
I think it's cool though. Like, there's been a lot of people who've left comments that have tried doing like one of those battery trays from Amazon, or like, a rechargeable. I just think it's kind of like a cool way for people to, like, a little bit less intimidating, because like when I started, my first ever project that I ever worked on was I built a Jupiter. I was like, I'm going to learn to solder, and I ordered a kit for a Jupiter because if I got the kit, I knew I would actually have everything, because I knew nothing about what I was doing. I was literally just watching a video and dripping solder onto the switches like I was like dripping candle wax like a medieval messenger. Like the soldering, it was.
Oh no!
It's crazy in there, but you know what?
Everybody has to start somewhere with soldering.
Everyone does. It's true.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think it's cool, like, because I was really nervous about like how to charge them and like how, just, so I don't know. I think it's a good first thing for somebody to do. It's neat.
Totally. I have to bend to put myself in that mindset sometimes when I'm working on like mod stuff or thinking about beginner projects, because I came into this hobby with like electronics work being my strong suit. I've repaired musical instruments, music like amps and stuff for a very long time. And so when I came into the hobby, I had a lot more to learn about working with springers than I did like flywheelers, because it was like, oh, you just got to solder like 6 times, psh, whatever. This is easy. Like it was never a big deal to me. But then like remembering that like, okay, like if someone else is soldering for the first time, like, okay, you have to have these like 20 things that I've just had for years, and you have to like learn, like understand like what you're looking for, how you expect it to behave, all this like weird stuff.
I'm still terrible at soldering. I'm a Springer nut.
Yeah, I remember asking, like, I would even say too, like, so many of the first things I did, like, I honestly did not understand what I was doing. Like, I barely understood how a switch worked. That's why whenever anyone is like, oh, I wish I could do that, I'm like, I knew absolutely nothing, like 2.5 years ago, like nothing. Didn't really even understand, like, common, normally closed, normally open. I don't know.
Right.
The other darts guy says to put the wire there. Like,
I think that's one of the things that's challenging about making like mod videos, is it's like trying to figure out like who's your audience.
Yeah.
Is it a person who is like, because like you want someone who's never done something before to be able to follow your video step by step and make their way through the project. But like, what are they learning on the other side of that? Did they just learn how to solder, or did they just learn how to mod a strife?
Yep.
Did they learn how the strife works, or did they just learn the steps to mod a strife?
And it's a tricky balance too, because I think the result of I know for me, like, I didn't really learn a lot of the how does it actually work when I did like watch the mod video for the Jupiter, but it definitely getting it working installed like a really wanting to learn more. I don't know. It's a weird hybrid thing of like, you want to sprinkle in that knowledge, but like maybe someone just wants to get to it as well. Like, and that can be a way to get someone kickstarted too. I don't know.
I will say that we are much more fortunate with knowledge being out there than when I first started, because I remember back when I was getting into this stuff, I was very set on flywheelers, and I remember after I had eventually been convinced otherwise to not go down the path of IMRs because we had discovered that lipos were a thing and whatnot, I remember having to research like what are all the stuff I needed for soldering equipment and whatnot, and then trying to strategically plan out how I was going to get this soldering equipment over the next course of several birthday and Christmas presents and whatnot.
Oh my god.
And then I remember back then a lot of times they'd go with the guides for mod guides for flywheelers would go with the understanding that you understood what normally opened was or normally closed. And me, a 12-year-old or however old I was in like 6th and 7th grade, would understand what those things were and exactly what was going on, or what they meant by this specific voltage, or like where they got this particular switch on eBay and what these motors from eBay were, or stuff like that.
I think that's a good point too, because I find even now, like, I agree, knowledge is really good, but like even now there's like little things, like I find it surprisingly hard to find, when the first couple times I would like putting in a voltmeter. It's like everyone talks about adding a voltmeter, and like it is easy, but if you don't know how easy it is, it's like it's actually weirdly hard sometimes to find examples of like some of the extras, like using it, like using a PWM, like actually finding like actually like a the pulse width modulator, if I'm thinking of people who don't know what that is, but like finding there's people, I see videos all the time with people who have installed one, but actually seeing a video of like, this is how you install it. This is where the wires go. And again, it's like simple enough, but it's simple enough because of like, all of us have done a bunch of things. There's still room for that library to grow.
I've never done a voltmeter.
But you also built a blaster entirely out of the internals of other blasters. So like you're good.
Like I said,
you're good.
I can't electronics for shit. I'm a Springer modder, okay?
Oops, internals is one of my faves.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so good.
Glad you like it.
Me and KT both kind of come from the same background. We actually knew each other in another hobby, actually modding, old Game Boys, and for music purposes. And I've done the same stuff, but I also have done, fabrication and stuff as well. And it's. I remember I did a video on the Nexus Pro, and it was, I was doing about the worker kit because Bradley Phillips had just done his, and I had the second part of the kit, so I just basically added on so that way people could follow along. And right. I remember talking about removing the pin and just saying, you could use another pin. And I remember there was a really angry person in the comments section, you just imagine that we all have spare parts laying around. And I was just like, and I commented, I was like, well, you could just use a nail or, anything. It just has to fit within there. Because you're trying your best when you're making these videos too, to try to think about oh, well, I'm going to do this and try to help them with this step and help them with that. And then you miss one weird niche one, and then people are mad at you for it. And you're like, I tried.
Well, I just made that video about fixing the Nerf Elite Junior Rambler.
Mm-hmm.
Which has that slam fire problem that every Nerf blaster has now for some reason.
Well, at least all of that kind, they're all just reskins of that one Dungeons and Dragons blaster,
right.
the Ember Strike, and after that one, they somehow screwed the mechanism on every single reskin.
Well, so, and I mean, Jolt and I had this conversation where it's I forget how few households have a drill.
Mm-hmm.
That throws me, because I was talking about doing the thing that Vile has done to fix Slamfire, which is putting a screw through the back of the stopper behind the spring on the trigger. And then you have it adjustable. And I was like, okay, that could be reasonable. I was concerned about is there enough material there to hold the screw thread and all this stuff? And Jolt was like, a lot of people just don't have drills. I was like, oh, I guess that would cause a problem with this plan. And I was like, I guess you could punch a hole with an awl, but that feels really questionable. And then we realized you could just, I think it was Vile that said you could just jam some stuff in there.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what I wound up doing. But then the thing from there was I was trying to be trying to make it really clear, you can put anything in here. It does not matter if it'll glue to the plastic, it'll work. And I tried to use the language in the thing. It was whatever material you have extra of that you are comfortable working with, that you have the tools or the materials to work with, you can, as long as it's rigid, cut it down to size and stick it in there. And I hope that makes sense to people. I hope that's because it's I know that when I started, when I was very young and I started trying, wanting to be able to open up and fix things, if I could use a screwdriver on it and be very clear, everything was very delineated on what I was working with, I was very comfortable opening things up, learning how they work and modifying them. But as soon as I had to deal with liquids and glue and things that are fluid and uncertain, I was I don't want to mess with this. And I think that it's especially for a lot of people starting out, it can feel daunting to be given an instruction that to us might make a lot of sense, but feels very vague.
Oh yeah.
To someone who's not used to being given very specific instructions or working from a kit or something like that.
I guess in my case, I kind of have a little bit better understanding on that background, because in my case, I am that young kid who was in the comment sections in 2016 who didn't have many tools and whatnot, and was commenting, hey, can I trade for $20 in a Maverick for a commission or something? Now all grown up or whatever. I still don't have all the tools for certain mods and whatnot, and I'm still collecting stuff like that. But that was me. I was the kid in your comment sections who was doing stuff like that and
totally.
Trying to figure out the hard way how to penny mod a Maverick, or how do I get around this certain thing in this particular way with lack of this tool?
Maybe your parents have a bin full of screwdrivers, but none of them are skinny enough to fit inside
exactly.
the screw hole on a blaster.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky enough to have a dad who is savvy with tools. My family has a lot of tools. We have power tools. We have screwdrivers out the wazoo. But not every family has access to that.
Do you even make mod videos anymore? Like mod guide type videos anymore?
Not as much. So not as I have a couple that I do really want to do, and I haven't done anything very extensive in a good while, and there's a pretty good reason for that. I do want to do one on. I do want to start doing a few on. I want to start doing some on and there are some out there, but I would like to do some for beginners. Here's how you use a here's how you use a MOSFET. And there are ones out there, but there's not a lot out there. And like just kind of showing that again and like going over how that works. And like here's how you add LEDs, and here's using like a buck converter and stuff. Like again, like all that stuff is kind of out there, but I'd like to do like a little series of kind of videos that like kind of like the reason I haven't done a lot of like full mod videos is I guess that you kind of fall into the thing of, I guess, one, like you kind of have to pick and choose how much stuff you do, and my inability to focus makes me do like a lot of shorts and stuff like that because I like kind of talking about a lot of stuff. The other thing is you do get to a point too where like it's like a lot of the mods feel the same. Like so I'll get people asking me about like like I went through a phase of really enjoying like just doing like super simple 9-volt mods, and I did a couple of videos about like hey, this is pretty simple, here's what you do. And I would get people asking like over and over again, it's like, can you do that to this blaster, can you do that to that blaster? I'm like, just go watch that video, and it kind of applies to them all. And I've had people ask about like modding like other ones where I'm like, there's great videos out there on modding a Strife or whatever. So I guess like it would need to be something like weird. I want to do one on the Neoblast, which is like small audience too, but like whatever. Like that one was kind of a fun one. I wouldn't mind doing that because it involved LEDs and protecting the LEDs. And I use a MOSFET in that one. Again, it's like not anything groundbreaking, but I think there's room for more of it, and there's probably like people who like follow along with my stuff that would enjoy seeing that. So yeah, and I also find it's just hard to find the time. Like doing a mod video is so much work.
It takes a lot of work.
So much.
I will say though that we really could use for some of those sometimes, because a lot of old videos for certain stuff like MOSFETs or LEDs or other stuff like that, they're from like videos back in the day from like very niche channels from the hobby history, like Carius or like Foam Data Services, and they're speaking in very technical terms and whatnot. Like they expect you to kind of know this stuff and whatnot. They're great videos, but like for newcomers, they're a little less friendly, I suppose, in that regard.
I learned a lot from the Foam Data Services video, like that, like for sure. And I would like make sure, like going over doing what I was doing, I definitely would be like, hey, go watch that video. This is where this is where a lot of information is kind of cited from. But like, just break it down, maybe even like even slower, and with just making people comfortable with how little I know, and even I can do it. That's that's my philosophy.
That's so important. I mean, the hobby really needs that. I think sometimes you see mod videos and it feels like the person making the video is trying to make it seem like they just like is as interested in showing that they have a lot of knowledge as they are in actually conveying the information in a way that's really useful to the average person. It just needs to be more useful to the average person. There needs to be stuff that's available at multiple different levels.
That's something that I kind of wanted to do with my channel at one point. I just have been taking a break from doing content, but whenever I can get back to working, because I've had a lot of issues with not being able to due to my health, but whenever I can do that and I actually have the it makes economical sense where I can afford to do that, one thing I'd like to go back and do is make a lot of flywheeler mod guides for stuff like that, because there is stuff like that out there for the Strife, but then you get into like other blasters and there's less out there. I'd kind of like to do something similar to that, and kind of make very simple guides to show, hey, this is what you can do to this one, and hey, there are files for if you want to do this, and this to it, or whatever. I'm not going to print them off and whatnot, but say you want them, they exist, or stuff like that.
For sure. I like, yeah, I mean there's always room for more too. More means more people will find it, and like that, I think that's always good. Like I also think there's room for I really, it's like, so again, it's like so dated. It's so much work for something that I know in my heart like will not get that many views, but like I want to do it anyway, and I think that's probably important. But like I want to do a new video on like modding and making like a boom nitron, because there's lots of lots of nitrons floating around. And when I was doing mine like a while ago, I was like, well, I like, it's, I think the inside of that is different enough that I'm like, well, I wouldn't mind some tips and seeing what people do. But like a lot of older videos too, I find like skip big segments of stuff. Like I'm a big fan. Like I really like short stuff for conversational things, but like for a mod video, I like long with lots of chapter markers, but like I want to see all of it. Like if I can, I want to see.
I think the last
detail.
Boom Nitron thing was from Bobo. And that was like years ago.
No, Drac did one.
Oh yeah. I remember they did one more recently, but I remember they were like it. They were kind of disappointed with how that turned out or something. I can't remember exactly.
Drac skipped a lot. Like it skipped quite a bit as well, and like I got through it. It was fine, but I was like, I'm gonna do another one at some point and like film the whole thing, because like I think it's neat to kind of like take a blaster like the Nitron that like I feel like lots of people have access to or see. Like if you mod that and you have some vortex lying around, like that's a fun thing to have in your collection. It's cool.
The amount of times I've like gone over to someone's house and they're like, oh yeah, that thing, I kind of forget I have it, and it's just a Nitron sitting in a corner, like something like that. They're like, oh yeah, it was cool when it's a kid, I just kind of forgot I had it. I wonder what I could do with this thing.
All anyone pays attention to is that scope.
Yeah,
it's all about that scope.
The scope is really cool, to be fair.
It is very cool. Okay, so we are out of time here. But Anthony, it's been so wonderful having you here. I always enjoy watching your content both on YouTube and TikTok. Would you want to tell the folks where they can find you? If by some bizarre chance somebody listening, one of the 14 people, according to our statistics that we were just looking at, that listens to the end of the podcast, doesn't already follow you, tell them where they can find you.
That's what I want. I want the diehards who are going to put in those watch hours. That's what I want. I can be found at Maritime Foam. I can be found on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram at those handles. And I would say I do the best job probably responding to YouTube and Instagram. And at TikTok, I'm not as good at responding to stuff, but I try to. If people have questions or want to talk about stuff or want to tell me about a thing, I'm always happy to talk about it.
That is awesome. Highly recommend Maritime Foam's channel. And the other really big question I have for you actually is when and where will people actually be able to get Gauntlet XLs?
Yeah. So as I completed my first final prototype and like was so happy to send footage to Marcus, my printer just like died. So I was all hyped to make a few, and I'm back up and running now. But there will be some on Etsy. I'll probably do some some kits, and I'll do.
I was going to say, is this going to be more of a kit and file release, or is it going to be a finished products being sold release?
I think
because I'm also asking for a friend, and the friend is me. To be clear,
I think it is the kind of thing like, and I know in the hobby, man, this could be a whole topic of its own. I know sometimes people get grumpy when like the files just aren't available. It will probably be for a while at least buy a kit of parts and hardware and build yourself and pre-assembled. It is one of those things that it is for fun, and I want people to be able to try it, but like. It's making a new blaster, especially even an impractical one. You do invest a lot, and definitely like none of us are doing this, I don't think, to make a fortune, and I hope not, because that's probably not going to happen. But I would.
Yeah, there are certainly better circles to be in if you're trying to make a fortune and whatnot.
Yeah, but your time is also worth money, and it's worth, and you should still get compensated for that time and that effort. It doesn't. Wanting to get some money does not mean that you are a greedy capitalist trying to milk every dime out of the,
right.
like get what you need to get out of it. Don't, because like it will wind up costing you to give these things to the hobby.
I did my spreadsheet. I did my spreadsheet of like hard costs, and like each one is like $60 US of like parts.
Oh my God.
And it's like I think that's something that people kind of miss with like I know people see like other 3D printed blasters out there, and they're like, oh, it's so expensive. I might have thought that once too, but boy, you put in some time, and you're like, no, the 3D printed hobby community blasters, like they have to go for something like that. They should be more expensive than injection molded, mass produced. Like you're kind of paying for art. I've called the motor tier a few times to people. I'm like, you know what? That is me as an adult going, I'm going to buy a piece of art. I'm probably not going to run around and play with it a whole lot. Honestly,
Totally.
I'm going to show it to people. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm a big fan of his stuff. And it's like, that is me buying a piece of art. It just happens to be 3D art.
I have a Mega Caliburn in my favorite 3D print colors. I doubt I will ever use this at anything. It's such a ridiculous thing, but man, I love it.
Yeah.
It's just such a nice like piece to have on the wall. For sure. Okay. Well, with that, thank you for that inside scoop on when I can personally get a gauntlet.
I want the pistol version.
Well, the good thing is if you order one, you'll get them both. The pistol is like it's like
you just,
a
like,
Wii
get the grip?
attachment.
Oh my God.
You put the wrist attachment
That's
in the
value
pistol,
right there.
and so it is the plan actually is you get it and it can be rail mounted, it can be a pistol, or you can put it on your arm.
A true
I
visionary.
love that it's all just together. That you just get all of it. That's
true
great. That's
visionary.
fabulous.
I'm going to say it again. True
beautiful.
visionary.
All right. Anybody else got anything special going on that you want to plug before we wrap this up?
The only place I can be found other than YouTube is in the corner eating hot glue.
Not TikTok?
TikTok.
You can find me at Grimm's Nerfworks or on this channel and buy Silver Fox Industry stuff. Gotta be consistent with their shilling for them. Buy their shit.
That is good. That is good. That is fair. I personally am in another month right now of writing a song every day. I realize that's not directly Nerf related, but if that interests you, I did do the music for this podcast and for the show.
Which we are super appreciative of.
Check me out at Kinetic Turtle in addition to at Family Foam Sport. That's where a lot of my music stuff is. And you can actually check out my daily songs and other music that I make. I release a weekly EP on my Bandcamp. And yesterday, when you're hearing this, was Bandcamp Friday, so you missed it. Sorry. Cool. I think we're done. I think we casted a pod. Thank you again so much for coming out, Anthony.
Thank you for having me.